Now, our panel is going to talk a little bit about building the university community partnership. But not just building it, but what are those promises that we make to each other, and what are some of those pitfalls? It all sounds easy, and it sounds pretty neat when you hear it, but there are a few sometimes challenges and opportunities. So let's talk about those. And we'd like to hear your perspectives as we address each of these questions. So after we hear from our panelists, we'll also take some questions and comments. So think a little bit about these questions. So the first question for Jane and Bob is, what do civic and business leaders value the most when they work with universities? Bob, you want to take that one first, or Jane?
Well, you know, it should always be ladies first, but this is difficult. As a kind of a background to my comments in our work with the city of Kennedale and the Kennedale community, over the past 7 years, we've had just over 300 students engaged in projects within the town. We've done used students to do citizen opinion surveys. We actually put together a bird habitat plan that we use as a in-kind match for a grant program. We've done a water conservation plan with students. We did a labor shift analysis to help us with the community strategic planning and a lot of our economic development work. We've done used students to do strategic plans or to guide those with our Chamber of Commerce, with Keep Kennedale Beautiful. We currently have a class working on a marketing analysis for our town center. And they've done the background research for a tax increment financing district, and I can go on and on. But I want you to understand that kind of engagement and that kind of ongoing activity. All of the projects from our perspective are projects that could not have been done because we don't have the staff, we don't have the resources to do that work. So we're always trying to reach into the university and to get assistance in order to leverage what resources we do have. I think the value within that it brings to our organization is it's contagious, I think, to have students in the environment. The enthusiasm that comes in with the students, I find really helps our department heads, and it helps the staff. The other thing they do is they'll bring ideas that sometimes we overlook. We had students in the School of Architecture that did drawings on dealing with some of the entrance or the improvements in Kennedale. And I think that, you know, after a while you get so beat down with what's there, you forget what could be. And when they came in and began engaging with the City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustments, the Economic Development Corporation, it really lifted and elevated the conversation about what we could do, and has really guided a lot of our conference and plan updates and some of the policies or ordinances that we have. The other thing that we did that was quite beneficial throughout the organization is about 2/3 of our employees have worked with students in the ethics class. And so began talking about case studies, about the ethical triangle, about the sense of duty, and I found that to be quite engaging for the staff. They actually participated with the students in making presentations. They wanted to lead some of that. And so it really changed the dynamics, and I think it's certainly improved the ethical climate within our community. And I think it's also been quite positive from a citizen standpoint. Our residents are getting quite used to responding to surveys. We just closed 2 surveys, one with the marketing for economic development and one for our Keep Kennedale Beautiful. So we have surveys that are going on just about every semester, and we find the council enjoys it and strongly supportive. But the residents engage in that. I've even had residents and board members ask how they could get students involved in their nonprofits. And so I've seen that go on now in several cases in our area.
Thanks, Bob. At Dallas Habitat, I think we have come increasingly to look at universities as a resource of expertise that we don't have, can't hire, and won't ever have a budget to do, and that there's a depth of expertise and technical know-how that we couldn't get otherwise. And we have found it in lots of different ways. The most recent thing is that last year we worked with a group of faculty members here at UNT in the MPA program. I saw my research team to work on the problem of blight in the city of Dallas. How do you operationalize it? How do you measure it? Where is it? How do you begin to think about what to do? That was a huge project and really complex, way more so than what we could ever have done. And we felt at Habitat that not only was this an issue that we grapple with, because we're not only in the home building business, we're in the neighborhood revitalization business. And so this was something that's real key to what we're trying to accomplish. So it was something we needed to do, but we also saw it as kind of our gift and the University of North Texas's gift to the larger community to bring that expertise. And then also, frankly, even if we could have done it with Habitat staff, I wouldn't have, because the university has a level of prestige and a reputation that we could not have brought to the table. You know, that what the faculty members found and said is what they found, and not what Habitat paid them to find. You know, and the university carries that, and it is so important that there are some pieces of research that I flat wouldn't do in-house because they're going to be controversial, and we need a neutral third party that carries that weight of the university. And frankly, I wouldn't go to an outside paid consultant either, because they don't have that, and that brand value is so important to the university and shouldn't be, overlooked. We do have interns, and we also have student volunteers. And I will tell you, they're a fresh look. Harrison was exactly correct that we expect a level of comfort with the technology that some of us might not have. There's a group of us baby boomers in our office that say, we need to go ask the smart young people. And we have a few cubicles that we keep the smart young people in. And we couldn't do without them. We really couldn't. And so those are the things that we look to the university to provide to us.
Well, there's no question, it seems like from a city's perspective, as well as from a nonprofit, there's value in this relationship. So now I'm going to ask the smart young people in the cubicle, how do you all feel about being the smart young people in the cubicle? Is there value to these relationships?
Somebody have some experience with that? Or,
Yes.
I mean, absolutely. With the UNT program, we've had an opportunity to partner with various different organizations. My HR class worked with City helping develop a recognition program for them, and just partnering with cities to work on projects like that helps us connect with what's going on in the real world versus what's just happening in the classroom. So whether it's branching out to help nonprofits with research projects that we're speaking of, it's usually beneficial for both sides.
And that's the common goal there, that it's mutually beneficial. BJ mentioned that this morning, the win-win relationships. So absolutely, we give the opportunity to apply the knowledge, and then the students have and see how that knowledge works in the real world, and put that on resumes. That's certainly a benefit. Any other benefits that some of you have had that worked on the research team or have done an internship or a practicum that you'd like to share? You're all so shy. This is your opportunity to shine. There might be someone out there that might need a job filled. Well, let me flip that then. Those of you that are using students, have you found any promises or pitfalls? We talked a little bit more about the promises, and we're probably going to hit a little bit of those pitfalls. What about you all out there? Anything that you found that Bob and Jane didn't mention? Yes?
Well, I work with students in the United States.
Okay.
And what I find beneficial is when I have a student who not only has big ideas, but they're able to balance that with what can you realistically do within a given semester. So that's one of my favorite parts of working with students that have really big ideas but can manage all of that.
That's great, and what a wonderful learning experience. I think I need to take a lesson in that. I got big ideas, but sometimes I can't get them all done or balance them. Excellent point. Okay, well, let's move to our second question. And this one also is for Bob and Jane, and we'll flip the order of responses this time. Is that a deal? Okay. What do these leaders see the greatest obstacles when partnering with universities? So now we're going to look a little bit at those pitfalls. So what are these obstacles of partnership?
Well, one of the things that I was so excited about in hearing the presentation about the University of Nebraska-Omaha is that they have pulled all of those resources into one place. Because from my perspective, I have to go find who's going to be interested in our work, and who can I engage, and who can actually meet their promises. You know, I've gone down the road with faculty members and with departments, and we try to work not just with UNT, but with UTA and UTD. You know, we try to build relationships all across the universities, and I have come to the conclusion that it takes me finding those one or two faculty members that really want to do this and want to work with me and figure out how to do it. And I'm just going to run into doors and doors and doors until I find the right one. So universities don't make it easy. Not to be harsh, and trying to get my organization to understand that, because they'll say, oh, let's get a class to do, and I'll say, you know, it is already January. So spring semester is set. People aren't working in the summer. We have to wait until fall. Now is the time to talk about fall semester. And they look at me like, I need this done tomorrow. What do you mean? And so that is a real challenge. And you can work around it, and you can get organizations accustomed to thinking out that far, but you have to really put some effort into it.
Excellent. Now I'm going to let BJ respond. He said he had a comment.
Don't assume we have that figured out. It is a huge problem, and it's almost like you need a spirit guide, for want of a better, somebody who has a role as kind of a liaison between the agencies and organizations who do some of that groundwork for you, and we're trying to build kind of spirit guides and kind of case managers within the structure to be able to help save the time of the nonprofit to do that. We don't want to get between you and the nonprofit and the faculty member or the class, but there is a lot of sifting, and it is very, very difficult, and we have not solved that yet either. And the other thing we're looking at is technology as a way to help deal with that. Again, it's fraught with some challenges because it's garbage in, garbage out, but But if you can begin to use some technology to be able to identify from a matchmaking standpoint, you know, what service-oriented courses, what faculty, kind of what volunteer efforts are going on, so that it's not as hard to try and identify. All I'm saying is it's very difficult, and we're still struggling with it.
I think the timing issue that Jane mentioned is a struggle. I know here at the university we have bought some new software. It's called OrgSync. And what can happen is an organization can indicate a need, and then we try to match that need with students and faculty projects. So that's just been purchased, and again, we're running.
We should compare notes, because we also have that same software, and evidently we're pushing the software developer in directions they've never thought of going. So.
Exactly, and that's what needs to happen. It's not quite a good fit. We have a person in our office, and I call Kim the matchmaker, because she's the director of our community and business organizations. And what happens is she sometimes gets that call, and then she reaches out, because it is complex when you have an institution that has nearly 36,000 students to get everybody matched up. Bob, what about you with some obstacles? And Bob and Jane have also the privilege of working in in institutions of higher education, and that sometimes gives them an inside track as to who to call.
Yeah, I'm going to ditto what has been said on getting the cities and getting the organization to think in terms of academic semesters and in that lead time that's required. The reference in terms of trying to find the right faculty members to work with us, I've actually been able to short circuit that a lot. I'm an adjunct faculty member at UTA, and so that gives me a decided advantage, obviously on these projects. But the other things I would say is you've got to expect some mistakes. We have some mistakes that occur, sometimes the way that interviews are being done, the way that some of the interaction goes on in the community, and we have to go back and spend some time to smooth over those. And there are some real misunderstandings. But I think that's where I think our boards of council is forgiving in that manner. I'm blessed too in having three of our 6 council members are also professors. So they have it's a much easier environment for me. I think that from an organizational standpoint is making sure that our staff has a mentoring attitude in terms of interaction. You know, if you've got staff members, some staff members are very good with that, some aren't. And so I have to make sure I avoid those staff members that aren't. And we're pairing up students that have a good mentoring attitude. And the other is making sure that your staff understands the weekly time frame. You know, if a student has a class on Thursday night and they send you an email on Wednesday, you have to respond to that on Wednesday because they need it for the Thursday night class. And so getting the staff attuned to that kind of response is just critical. If it doesn't, then the organization has problems and the student has problems within the classroom. So making sure that awareness is key.
And I think the communications, Bob, is just what always has to take place. It's an ongoing strategy. Students have to communicate with their mentors, and mentors have to communicate with students. Brian, you do this on a daily basis. Do you have anything else you might like to add to the pitfalls and the promises?
Well, I think that one of the things you want to focus on, especially at both a instructor level but also a university level, is understanding your context in your community. You know, service learning happens from Harvard to North Dakota State, and so they're all very different, whether it's an urban area like UNO or Villanova, or whether it's a rural area like Iowa State or Iowa. There are simply very different communities, and understanding the communities from the faculty viewpoint is very important. Texas is going to look, or UT is going to look at state issues and be involved in Austin in a different way than UNT could be here locally, where you have a metroplex that's very complex. UNC, a lot of their engagement is purely faculty driven, and they focus mostly upon municipal issues. So part of what you've got to decide is exactly what does community engagement mean, not only from a practitioner standpoint, but also from a faculty and an administration viewpoint, because the faculty and the administration viewpoints are often different as well. You're dealing with a tremendous amount of stakeholders here, and you're trying to basically get a common definition. So how did you beat the faculty, and how did you convince the faculty to never mind?
It was all their idea.
Exactly.
And I think Brian's hit on something too. When we think about the North Texas region, we're thinking about cities like Dallas and cities like Fort Worth, but we're also thinking about communities like Argyle and Sanger and Ponder. And so while we don't really have to go from Harvard to North Dakota, we have those right here in our own community. So something certainly to keep thinking about. Well, let's talk now for a few minutes to these people who work in the university. So Brian and BJ, these questions are for you. What are reasonable goals for UNT for the next 5 years in expanding community engagement and its mission?
Let me start out with that just because I'm home team. Then you can say the mean stuff, okay? Get that list. I wrote down that list. Okay. All right. First of all, are there any other administrators here? If you're a high-level administrator at UNT, would you please raise your hand? Okay, just one. And she signed certain agreements. Just the first thing that I think the university needs to do that would help you the most is, and this is a best practice that many other universities have done that UNT has not, and that is we need a service learning designation for courses. That's just that's just a basic principle, and should be done relatively easily, quickly. That enables two things. That enables you as a student to identify the courses that are going to engage in this particular pedagogy. That enables practitioners or those who would like to collaborate with the university to quickly and easily identify which faculty are working in service learning and which courses and when they are scheduled. And that enables and deals with a lot of the coordination problems, or it's at least a foundational issue and something that's easily done. That's also a foundation for then changing or adopting or adapting the tenure, promotion, and review issues as well. You have to have certain institutional level changes to build even a basic foundation, and we're just now starting that. And so that needs to be ramped up as quickly as possible. And it's fairly costless in terms of how to move forward.
That's it, huh? Yeah, they're really kind of operational issues, and there are kind of the big, hairy, audacious kinds of goals that you kind of need to sort through and look at what's reasonable within a 5-year period. You don't want to sell yourself short in what your ability is to get there, but you also you don't want to make it or set yourself up in a position where you feel like you're not having success. And you probably need, if you have a 5-year goal, you need to have milestones. I mean, none of this is magic. You need to have kind of milestones and assess how you're doing. I always say the goals are important, and you need to stick with them. And what changes are the strategies and tactics and an operational component.
And it may not work because something's changed in context of where you're doing it, the environment, or frankly it just doesn't work. The worst thing you can do is take something on because we did it or because somebody else did it. It needs to fit the culture and context of the institution, and then figure out what's right for UNT, and then move forward with that. I do think some of the things that we've talked about, at least from the student standpoint, are really important. Or you need to have a goal that says you're organized in the right way to achieve what you want to achieve. Because if you don't have that in place, if you don't have basically the structure and mechanisms in place, and a good example is the service learning designation. If you don't have those things in place, then it's very hard to move forward with the next step, which is trying to now engage more and more faculty in service learning activities, or get students. If there's not an incentive for students, or if there's not an incentive for faculty to at least get the thing rolling, then it'll once you reach that point, it'll sometimes take on a life of its own. You can't do it on the cheap, at least on the initial side. Some of this doesn't cost anything at all, it just is organizational and promotional. Some of it is going to take some resource commitment. And the important about the resource commitment is it says the institution is serious about it. If the institution is serious about it, it's going to find some resource support, and that I use resources instead of just money, because sometimes it's allocating personnel towards something, or reallocating personnel towards something, space, facilities, all of those things. So and you've got to be flexible and identify the barriers that are going to be in place for you to do that, and then knock them off. And it's amazing how many times you will be in these situations where, and public administration people know this all the time, where people will say, well, we've always done it that way, or we really can't do that. And then when you probe and find out, there's no statutory limit, that says you can't do that. There's no, trustee edict that says you can't do that. Somebody in 1964 found something bad happened, and they set something in place, and everybody thinks it's in concrete. It's not in concrete. We're finding this every single day. We ask this question, why do we do it that way? And when we dig in and find out, somebody made something up. And so you can unmake those things. I'll stop.
Good. Any ideas from you all, especially our alumni? I mean, you want your degree to grow in value, and I know many of you wouldn't be here today because you love this place, you're connected. What do you think our mission for community engagement ought to look like in 5 years from now? Yes, and speak loudly so our audience can hear.
I don't work in public administration, but I have an MPA, but I'm a citizen of Denton, and it seems like for UNT it would be hard to find what your outreach is, because you have such a presence in the city of Denton, and then you have all the small towns, like you said, we have Dallas and Fort Worth, and that seems like that goal would be one of the hardest things to even do. But I'd like your input on that.
I think we kind of talked around it, but the inventory issue, it's amazing how hard it is to just even get a handle on what, there are tons and tons of things going on now, but you don't even know what you don't know. And it is difficult to create an inventory. We have you mentioned OrgSync, we're also using digital measures as a way for faculty annual reviews, and we've added and restructured the community engagement portion of that, because everybody writes down teaching and everybody writes down research, but the engagement piece is a very hard metric to come up with, and that everybody can share and understand and measure effectively. So we're now using that as a way to create central databases, and we now want to move staff into that, because it's not all about faculty, it's also about staff who are heavily involved in engagement activities. The students we're getting some handle on, but so just being able to figure out what's going on and who's doing what is a monumental undertaking. But that doesn't mean just because it's hard you don't do it. And I would think that would be a very important step.
let me add to that, there's really two dimensions. I think you've identified. One is simply identifying your catchment area and what's inside that catchment area. And that's very difficult, I think, right now for UNT. And I think the new president's going to be talking about that a lot more and trying to identify that. The other dimension, though, is the extent to which you are inclusive across campus. The strategic issue that I would identify most importantly right now is that service learning should be targeted toward engineering. At most of your large flagship universities, the engineering programs in schools are one of the #1 service learning outputs. They can go build stuff. They can go do stuff that has a physical and immediate impact upon a community, and universities like to put funding into STEM programs. So strategically, when you interface those two, you have nice pictures, nice optics, and it gets some immediate attention from people who raise funds as well. And so part of our objective as a university has to be to not only define that geographic catchment area and exactly where we want to focus, because focusing upon downtown Dallas is not the same as dealing with Crum. No offense, Lisa. So good. Crum is a wonderful place. One of our most wonderful faculty members is a paragon of virtue who lives in Crum. But those are very different areas. But as a full-service university, we also have the ability to serve many different types of areas. But we also have to figure out, where exactly does the Health Science Center fit into that? Where exactly does UNT Dallas fit into that? Are we looking at this from a system-wide perspective? Are we looking at this from a main campus perspective? All of those are high-level administrative issues that can create significant barriers to actually achieving a greater functional and purposive engagement process.
Excellent thoughts. Any more thoughts from you? Well, let's drill down now a little bit further. Okay? Well, what role should public administration have in building successful community engagement initiatives at UNT? And Brian, why don't we start with you?
We should be allowed to rule the world. and we're basically benevolent dictators, so if you just put us in charge, it'll all work out. That's not the right answer.
Well, where do I sign you up?
No. One of the challenges, I think, that we have to deal with is the difference between what I would call standard service learning community engagement at an undergraduate level versus preparing students for professional level competencies and moving them into the workforce at a relatively high level. Those are different issues. If you talk about service learning and community engagement, especially at the freshman and sophomore levels, a lot of those learning experiences are not professional, they are experiential. And they are designed to expose people to the community, to give them an opportunity to engage the community as a process of learning about the fact that the world is very different than they may have been exposed to. That's a different learning objective than you have when you're trying to train people to move into municipalities and to make high-level management decisions relatively quickly. So our public administration program here obviously serves a master's program. Our EADP program serves an undergraduate program. We're also one of the 2 or 3 programs in the country. You also have a PhD program and are not at a land-grant institution. So we're serving multiple populations. And part of the challenge is serving multiple populations with limited resources and doing so at an appropriate level for each student. And so I'm sure as practitioners, you don't treat your interns the way you would treat freshmen and sophomores engaged in a community engagement experience. They're just different. They're different types of experiences. They're different types of projects. And so part of what we have to decide and part of what we have to do is to be a best practices program, and to be a program that shows how it should be done, how it can be done, and what a difference it makes. And that's a goal for our department, and that's something we can do. But quite frankly, it's difficult to do because we're not in one of the larger colleges. And so it's a little bit difficult to get the face time necessary to do that. We've been doing these activities for a long time. This is nothing new for us. We've done this forever. It's now politically popular. And so that's good. You know, we're glad everyone's catching up, like, just like you said. I think same experience that you all had. Maybe you can talk about that.
I'm getting teed up a lot here. I do think those points are really important. I talked to one or two folks during the break, and it's clear in some ways at the campus-wide level that there's some mission identification challenges for UNT, and that's not unusual. And I mentioned how that was a huge struggle for us as a campus because we couldn't decide what we wanted to be when we grew up. That's not unusual, but it's pretty important that campus sort that out and figure that out as a campus. But even if that hasn't happened as a campus, there's no reason that public administration cannot do that itself. My experience with doing that is it's very important for the mission of the department and the program to be clear, both to the faculty and staff, and obviously for the students and the stakeholders for the department or program. That is really important, and if engagement is a component of that, then you need to be really clear about what it is that separates you, is unique, distinctive, your core, what the core things are that you're about, of which engagement is a part. If you do that, you don't have to wait around for the campus to figure it out, because you can move forward, because you have a clearer sense of who you are and where you're going. I think that's very, very important. You probably need to identify a champion, or you need to identify faculty or staff or whoever that are pretty passionate about this and are willing to devote some time and effort to it. I think you need to identify what the niche is, because engagement's a big thing. I think public administration is uniquely set up to do this. As Brian said, it's because you've done it for a long time. Maybe you haven't used those terms, maybe you haven't used those phrases, but it's all about engagement, I think, in public administration. I think it needs to be pretty strategic and pretty focused. And that kind of goes to the niche thing, so that everybody knows kind of what you're trying to accomplish. This goes back to the goal issue. And I guess lastly about this is you do it for the right reasons. You don't do it because it's popular, or you don't do it because now everybody's. You do it because it's who you are and it's what you're about, and because you value it. And strangely enough, if you value it and you really believe in it, good things will happen down the road. Again, it's not just doing things right; it's doing the right things, and it really is important. And I think it's a core value of public administration. It's different than a core value of social work, which tends to be, again, heavily social justice and advocacy driven. Public administration has strong values, but they tend to be, again, professional management, they tend to be expertise, they tend to be things that are value driven and are different. But the key is you know what those values are, and you figure out how engagement fits within that structure. If those things happen, the program's going to be just fine. If it drifts, if the mission drifts, or you don't stick to the knitting, you don't keep eyes on the prize, then you just drift. And if you drift, it's like the Cheshire Cat. Any road will do if you don't know where you're going. It doesn't matter which way you go. So I think that piece is really important to kind of reflect.
Excellent. Yeah, how about Bob and Jane, you reflecting a little bit on this?
I spent a big chunk of my career working in Georgia and in South Carolina. And in both of those states, and in much of the southeastern part of the United States, there is a real tradition among universities, and particularly among the land-grant universities, to have institutes and centers of public affairs or of government that do training, that do applied research, that provide a locus for the outside community to engage the university. And those institutes are, I hate to tell the whatever administrators are here, but they're funded and they have staff members, and then they make it easier for the faculty then to engage the community. So, my husband and I moved back to Texas after being gone for many years, and I start looking around and saying, where's the Institute of Public Affairs? Oh, well, there is kind of sort of one, but they don't really have a staff, and it's not just for UNT, but it's with all my universities around. Where is it? And I personally would make a pitch for some kind of institutional commitment to this idea of community engagement, and that is going to require a little bit of funding.
Good, good. Well, I'm going to put the panel on the spot now. We've talked about this whole notion of building university and public partnerships. Promises and the pitfalls. If you were to leave this group with one thought after our nearly an hour conversation, what would you leave the group with? Give them a minute to think about this. We'll have a little clock ticking. But they've got to give us just one thing. And we'll take whoever's first, whenever you're ready.
Does your beloved sister have a brother?
Yes. And I mentioned him, you, and it's not going to work. I'll just reemphasize what I said before. I'm a big strategic planning guy, and I think it's, who are you? What are you about? What makes you, again, distinct, unique? Figure that out, especially as it relates to engagement, because that's what we're talking about here, and then stick with it. And know what your roadmap is. Doesn't mean you don't get pulled off the road. Everybody gets pulled off the road. Things happen. But do you know where the road is? Once you figure that out, so we can get back on it. I mean, it's really simple, but it's amazing how hard it seems to be. And don't cookie cutter. Don't put somebody else did this, so Omaha did this or whoever. Figure out what is good for North Texas, and then that's what you do. I mean, if you do that, I think you'll be in really good shape. The other thing I would say to Jane's point is it's a chicken or egg argument in terms of the funding issue. The Institute of Government of Georgia got a boatload of money from the legislature, and it's a great deal and good for them. But don't wait around for the money to come before you move forward on something. I mean, we have a lot of departments who sit there and say, just give me $1 million and I'll go do it for you. And my response to that is, you've got to be passionate about where you want to head, and strangely enough, the money can come with that. And that was kind of my message in the earlier presentation. We started out doing the engagement stuff because it was the right thing to do, and we figured out how to, with baling wire and chewing gum, how to move things forward. And then, strangely enough, the donors caught up to us a little bit. And they said, well, they're putting their resources and time and effort into this. Maybe we can help make that happen. So I really am a believer, yes, the money has to come to move it to the level you need to move it at, but you also have to be committed, and there's got to be skin in the game for the organization to do it. And somehow that'll play out. Gee, that was one point.
Okay, you can do two.
I was just going to say, I think my one point would be to encourage the alumni that are here to get involved in this. I think we could really help the university move forward. We're the ones that have the work that needs to be done, and it's hard for faculty to figure out who to call and where where to go. And I think we could also, with our money and support of the university, push the university to really go down this path. And so that would be my message.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Jane has said. Is from a city standpoint, I think we all have a good, clear vision about where we want to go. We've got a strategic plan, and the idea is to look at those areas where you really need to leverage some resources, and look at how you can come back and contact or engage a university to help you meet some of those. And I think when you're clear about the objective you want, you're going to find support, certainly among the faculty or the coordinators with whom you have contacts.
Brian, did you get the last word?
It's lunchtime.
Not yet, not yet. Would anyone else like to have the last word? Well, I think there's no question in my mind that building university and community partnerships is a win-win. And I think this institution, the University of North Texas, has done this for many, many years. And it has done it in many, many areas. And I think we could actually create a list that would absolutely blow your mind. But I think, as BJ said, the inventorying, the getting some kind of a strategic plan around this, but it is going to take the relationship. So I'm going to challenge each of you to work with your alumni in helping us be the engaged university in the North Texas region. Thank you all very, very much. And